What if I told you guys one of the most ridiculous Mortal Kombat games ever made is also one of the most important in the franchise? Because before Mortal Kombat went 3D, like Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, before Deception, before the franchise completely reinvented itself, there was Mortal Kombat Trilogy, the Armageddon of the arcade era. And this wasn't just another sequel. Trilogy was basically Midway taking years of Mortal Kombat history, throwing almost everything into one game and saying, okay, here, have it all. You have characters from Mortal Kombat 1, the original, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Mortal Kombat Ultimate 3, new versions of existing fighters. You have secret characters, a massive roster for the time, and on the arcade version especially, it was one of the craziest Mortal Kombat experiences you could ever have. But is the trilogy still worth talking about today? And why does this game still matter? Let's talk about it. But if you guys don't know me by now, I'm Mr. Frosty Flames, but you can call me Mike. We do anything news, reviews, playthroughs, anything FGC related, anything superhero related, just gaming, geek related, period. So if you enjoy that style of content, be sure to hit that sub button and join the Mr. Frosty Flames Legion. Anyways, let's get back to the video. So Mortal Kombat Trilogy was the ultimate classic Mortal Kombat game. I understand it's probably not the best, but it basically encapsulates the whole original 2D era. Think about what Midway was doing here. They had Mortal Kombat 1, Mortal Kombat 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and instead of just simply moving on, they took all of that history, all the fatalities, all the stages, everything, and they put it together into one package. And that's why playing Mortal Kombat Trilogy feels almost like a time capsule. You're getting characters from across the franchise's early years, the MK1 versions of like Raiden and Kano, and you have them with the new versions all in one piece. It's chaotic, it's excessive, and to be honest, that's part of the charm. The roster was also insane, and that was one of the biggest selling points of Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Obviously the roster, you had the original characters, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Liu Kang, Raiden, all those people, Johnny Cage. Then you had the Mortal Kombat 2 editions like Kitana, Melina, Kung Lao, Jax, Baraka. Then Mortal Kombat 3 brought characters like Stryker, Sindel, Nightwolf, etc. And then the trilogy even brought more characters like the classic Sub-Zero, Human Smoke, Cyber Smoke, Rain, Ermac, all these characters and all these other characters and alternate characters that made the game feel absolutely packed. And by modern standards, a roster this large would be a massive selling point. But in the 90s, this was insane. This felt insane for an arcade game. It was fan service before fan service was everywhere. This is something that I think Trilogy deserves more credit for, because modern games love nostalgia, Let's bring back all the old characters, let's bring back all the classic costumes, let's bring back the old stages, remake the classic fatalities, etc. It's everywhere nowadays. But Mortal Kombat Trilogy was doing this decades ago. It was essentially built around nostalgia back then. And the difference is, at the time, these games weren't even that old. So Trilogy felt like the ultimate celebration of everything Mortal Kombat had become, which is why it's like the Armageddon of the arcade era. It was almost like a greatest hits album or something like that, except you could actually play it. Now, of course, the Mortal Kombat arcade era didn't end with Mortal Kombat Trilogy. You obviously have, Mortal Kombat 4, which was the last official really arcade game that they released. However, a lot of fans like to see Mortal Kombat Trilogy as the true end, because Mortal Kombat 4 was sort of like in a weird spot. Yes, it was an arcade game, but it was like sort of like in the middle between the arcade and transitioning into the 3D era, because it was really the first actual 3D era game, because you had the 3D mechanics, you had, the 3D models, etc. And then you moved on to Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, which was just full-blown 3D. So for me, yes, Mortal Kombat 4 was the last of the arcade games. However, I like to see Mortal Kombat Trilogy as the last actual arcade era level game. It was special. The arcade version is special, and this is where I think that it's important to separate Trilogy from its other versions, because the arcade version was never actually released commercially. Instead, Mortal Kombat Trilogy existed as a console game. A lot of you guys don't know this about me, but that was my first Mortal Kombat game. I think it was on the PS1. But the arcade version became a fascinating piece of Mortal Kombat history, because the arcade build had its own unique identity. It was designed around the arcade experience where Mortal Kombat had originally became a phenomenon, and that's important. The arcade is where these games built their reputation. People crowded around cabinets. They would go to the arcade, put their coins in, and they challenged strangers. They watched other players. They discovered secrets. They tried to climb the ladder. splatter. That's what built the legacy of Mortal Kombat, and that's what propelled it to be a mainline franchise today. And Mortal Kombat Trilogy represented the culmination of that entire era, you know, the classic arcade Mortal Kombat at its most excessive. And it showed how far the series had come. Think about what Mortal Kombat looked like in 1992. You had like a handful of characters, like what, like 6, 7, or 6, 7, whatever. I don't even know how many characters. You had Johnny Cage, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, all those characters. And a fighting game that was mostly famous because of how controversial it was. Then you get to Mortal Kombat Trilogy and suddenly there's an entire universe of lore. You have dozens of characters, multiple factions, years of storylines and arcade endings. You have secret characters, different versions of fighters, and an absurd amount of content. That progression is crazy. Trilogy is basically proof of how quickly Mortal Kombat grew. It went from just sort of like an arcade experiment with a small team to one of the biggest fighting game franchises in the world. And I just want to say that when I played this game for this video, you know, I haven't played this game in a long time. And, you know, hearing all the old stage music and all the sound effects, you know, like Raiden's gibberish and like, you know, the punching sounds and them getting hit sounds, it's amazing. Like, especially the stage music, they're all super recognizable. Like, even if I don't know what specific, you know, soundtrack is playing for what specific stage, you know, I heard that song before and I remember it. I can't think of one iconic stage sound from, you know, Mortal Kombat X, 11, or 1, you know, the stage music sort of just like blends in. Of course, you know, if you played it, I would probably point it out, you know, that's it, that soundtrack was probably in Mortal Kombat 11, but it really doesn't stand out. In Mortal Kombat Trilogy, especially the old arcade games, they do stand out. They have this sort of like dark and atmospheric tone to it with these loud percussion and, you know, chants, especially on that church stage. You hear like the chants. I mean, what happened? Why are we downgrading from the arcade era? This was the 1990s. I hope that the next Mortal Kombat game really ups their stage game. A good example of this is Street Fighter. Man, Street Fighter has like character themes and stage themes that are instantly recognizable. I say that Mortal Kombat should do that because they used to do that in the past. I don't know why they're doing it, you know, or they're not doing it now, especially with Mortal Kombat 11. I know they are, but they're just not putting enough effort into making it what it was before or making it stand out, because soundtrack really does make a difference in the game. That's just my take on it. Let me know what you guys think too. But anyways, I don't want to pretend like Mortal Kombat Trilogy was flawless, because it absolutely wasn't. You know, this game is chaotic. The roster isn't perfectly balanced. You know, some characters are clearly stronger than others. You know, some characters feel like they were thrown in because Midway wanted as much content as possible. Like they just like tacked them on. And the game could just feel like just like a mashup of just everything tacked on from previous entries. But to be honest, I think that's what makes Mortal Kombat Trilogy interesting. It wasn't trying to be perfectly balanced. It wasn't trying to be the most refined Mortal Kombat ever. It was just trying to do what Armageddon did, you know, try to be big. And that's an important distinction. But getting to the point of my video, no, there's a reason people still talk about Mortal Kombat Trilogy today, and I don't think it's simply nostalgia. It's because Trilogy represents a version of Mortal Kombat that we don't really get to see anymore. Like, they didn't remake this game until the Legacy Collection, or it wasn't even a remake, it was like a port. It's a game that says, okay, here's the entire roster, here's a ridiculous amount of content, here's the old stuff, here's some new stuff, here's some secrets, and just simply have fun. There's something incredibly appealing about that, especially today when modern fighting games are often built around, you know, season passes, DLC characters, and content just being added gradually over time. Trilogy feels like a complete package from the old days. Everything is already there, you know, you just turn the game on and the history of classic Mortal Kombat is sitting right in front of you. So, you know, why does Mortal Kombat Trilogy still matter? It's because it's the final celebration of an era, you know, the arcade era. MK1 created it, you know, MK2 expanded it, MK3 sort of like reinvented it into something better, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 refined it, and just Trilogy took all of that and put it into one package. It represents the end of classic Mortal Kombat, right before the franchise took one of its biggest risks going ever, you know, going 3D and just not looking back. That makes Trilogy even more interesting because you're not just playing playing, you know, an old Mortal Kombat game. You're just looking at the end of a whole era and the final snapshot of the franchise before, you know, everything changed. So Mortal Kombat Trilogy might not be the most balanced arcade game. It's definitely not the most polished, and depending on which version you're playing, it definitely has its problems. But I think that's missing the point. You know, Trilogy wasn't about perfection. It was about like a celebration of the arcade era. It was Midway taking everything that made Mortal Kombat special and putting it into one ridiculous package. And to be honest, I think that's why it survived in the minds of fans for so long, because when you boot up Mortal Kombat Trilogy, you're not just playing one Mortal Kombat game. You're playing a piece of Mortal Kombat history, and it's the end of the whole arcade generation. And that's why I think Mortal Kombat Trilogy still matters. But I want to hear from you guys. Do you think Mortal Kombat Trilogy is one of the best classic Mortal Kombat games, or do you still prefer, you know, Mortal Kombat 2 or UMK3? And if you could bring one thing from Mortal Kombat Trilogy into a modern Mortal Kombat game, what would it be? Let me know in the comments down below. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to join the Mr. Frosty Flames Legion. Thank you guys for watching. Mr. Frosty Flames out. Ciao.